Hey, hi. Let's learn about SQL basics. So, using not MySQL or not even using various SQL platforms like your SQL, Microsoft SQL, and all that. So, let's try to start using SQL with our Snowflake. So, now Snowflake comes into a category of data warehouse, and even we can use our MySQL or Microsoft SQL or PostgreSQL or any of these platforms for our various data warehousing operations. And whereas Snowflake going to project themselves towards OLAP transactions. So what exactly meant by OLAP transactions are, so like mostly we use OLAP systems in order to perform analytical operations. Whereas your regular warehouses can be used like MySQL and all that can be used for your transactional purpose. So if any activity happened in order to write it, we will be using OLTP machines or warehouses. So like your OLAP is mostly used in order to perform analytical operations. So now here you are able to see this is our Snowflake interface where you are able to see on this side it's going to be your various databases. If you want to create Snowflake account, it's free of cost. It's easier than installing MySQL in your system. You can simply have a free account without even giving any credit card. You can start using your trial account. So this is where you can see various databases inside your Snowflake, and where you are able to see on this side you have warehouses. So now there is a small difference, means like in a regular means like MySQL and all that. Why Snowflake been very popular is because of its architecture. Within Snowflake you actually have three different layers. The very first layer, we are able to call it as a we can say cloud layer. So whatever you are logging in, you are able to see this UI. So we can call it as a cloud layer. So in order to store the data, so here I can see there are databases. So how exactly someone can store the data? All the data related to whatever the databases I have, all this we are storing it inside your storage layer. That storage layer can be any of your cloud-based data warehouses, or then saying data warehouses, cloud platforms. Now let me write it down. So your Snowflake comprises of three unique architecture. One is your cloud layer, where exactly you can log in, where you can create various users, everything you can do it in the cloud layer. And the second layer is now every data, whichever I have it inside my Snowflake, I want to store it. So in order to store it, I have my storage layer. So the storage layer can be called as any of your cloud providers. So it can be AWS. So while you're creating free account, you're able to see. So in order to create Snowflake, you cannot just simply give your details and you cannot create. You just need to select your storage provider. It can be AWS, it can be Microsoft, and even it can be your GCP, Google Cloud Platform. So you can start using any of these three cloud platforms as your storage layer. So now you don't need to log into AWS, you don't need to log into Microsoft, you don't need to log into GCP. Whereas Snowflake going to store all the data you are storing here, going to be stored inside their storage layer, so that you can scale your data storage. There is no need to worry about so like how much data you are storing. You can store any level of data because of your storage layers from your cloud platforms. And the third one, we call it as compute layer. What do you mean by compute layer? So in order to run any of your queries, so now I created a database, I developed my SQL database, I developed my database here. I want to retrieve data from this particular BPEC database. So in order to retrieve it, I want some power. We can say RAM, or I can say CPU. So I need to have that power. So without that power, I'm unable to go back into this BPEC and I cannot perform certain operations. So same like a laptop. Your laptop is having a hard disk. So you have a hard disk, but it doesn't mean so you can go back and you can run SQL there. So now in order to store your data, so storage layer is more like a hard disk. You can go back, you can store all the data in storage layer, and compute layer is more like your laptop. So you can go with any level of compute layer. Here you can see no warehouse selected. So you can create warehouses, you can select any power warehouse there. So based on your activity. So we can go with maybe like you can go with single node warehouse, we call it as, or we can go with multi-cluster warehouse. You can go with single cluster warehouse, or you can go with multi-cluster warehouse. So based on the power of your operation, you can go and you can select your compute layer. So now in lines of compute, so if I want to go a bit deeper, so in lines of compute layer, so this acts like a shared nothing architecture, and in lines of a storage layer, it acts like a shared So disk architecture. So in lines of storage layer, it is having a shared disk architecture. And in lines of compute, it is having a shared nothing architecture. And cloud layer is where you start creating everything, going to be your cloud layer. So now this is our simple idea of our Snowflake. So whenever you're creating an account, you need to have a storage layer. You need to log in through your cloud layer. And in order to perform any operations, you need to have a warehouse. Now see, I want to do the same operations here. So now in order to do that, what I'm doing very fast. So here you can see where you can write down your queries. And on the bottom side, you are able to see three different ones. So if you just see here this part, you can see three different buttons, something you can see in your SQL. If I just click on close sidebar, what are all the databases you are seeing? If you click on it, the databases section going to be closed. Again, if you click on it, you are able to open that. So if you run any query, you're able to see the query in the result section here. So this is your result section. So if you click on that button, the center button, you are able to see the result section. I don't want the results. You can just click on it. It's going to be minimized to the half. Even if I want to close it completely, then you can click on this particular one. Again, if I click on this, we are closing the entire result section here. Now, I want to create a database, or you want to go for a warehouse. If I want to create a warehouse, you can go to this particular one. So here you can see warehouses. You can select this warehouses, you can create the warehouses. So now every warehouse now, as of now, they are suspended. But the moment you start running the queries, you're able to get, means like you're able to start starting the warehouses. The reason is, so now if you're the SQL queries you are writing, if they are inactive, so automatically the warehouse is going to be suspended. And whenever you write a query, it automatically triggers. You don't need to start it, so that it's going to help us in lines of our billing. Now let us go back to my query. I don't want to create any new one. I just want to create a new SQL worksheet. So here we go. I got my new SQL worksheet. So here there are various roles. Again, if you click on, you can see various roles. There is account admin, organization admin, task on BEPEC. I created my own roles. Means like role is more, you can take it in one simple way. Account admin is responsible for creating users, creating roles, all this he can do it. But whereas your sysadmin can mostly, means like I'm not going deep into that. So sysadmin is mostly eligible of creating databases, creating of schemas, creating of tables and all that. So now in simple, I'm not going with roles. So now in order to, in a simple way, what exactly a role is, what level of authority someone is having on top of a data warehouse, what are all activities he can do on top of a data warehouse are designed or specified by your role. So now we can create new roles and we can allocate what he can do within your data warehouse level. Now, I'm choosing in simple. So the best option every time. So if your goal is now in this session, we are learning basics of SQL. So in order to do that, you can simply type, so use role. So you can just type use role sysadmin. If you're able to say use role sysadmin, and if you use colon, you're able to see it's like same like your SQL. So same like your SQL, and it's an SQL. So there is nothing to say, hey, it's same like SQL. So now what exactly happened? I'm using a role sysadmin. So here if you see, the account admin role is changed to your sysadmin role. Now we need to check whether we have any warehouses or not. If I look into it, yes, under sysadmin, we have a warehouse, compute WH warehouse. So sometimes what happens, people going to have the roles, but they may not have a warehouse. So without a warehouse, you cannot run the commands in Snowflake. Now I have a warehouse. Now I want to create the database. So in order to create database, I'm just closing this window. And even I'm minimizing this. So I just want to focus only on the code. Let me just zoom this code a bit so that you can view it. Yeah, you can view this code. So I'm going with use sysadmin. Now here, I want to create every time your Snowflake comprises of three levels. In your regular SQL, you have database. I'm writing DB. And then you have directly tables. So inside database, you have tables. But in Snowflake, you have a database. So we can take database as a kind of a warehouse if you want. So like for one company, it's a database. And then under that, you got schema. Schema, you can take it as, in lines of your data warehousing terminology, we can take it as data marts. You're able to take it as data marts. And under the schema, you have tables. So under the schema, you have tables. So now in this way, we have the structure. Let's try to create all the three stuff step by step. So in order to create any, for example, if I want to create a database, I can just say create or replace. So database, I just want to say create or replace. So now why I'm using create or replace is in case if that database name is already there, without throwing any error, I'm just saying create the database. Or in case if the database is there, you can replace it. That's not a right approach, but simply, so like this is for testing sake, I'm just saying create or replace database. I'm just saying it as a very simple Kant underscore database, some name. So again, use colon. It's the same way like you do it in your regular SQL, and just say control enter so that you're able to get the output. Here you're able to see the syntax. It is saying database Kant underscore database successfully created. I want to cross check whether it created or not. So just I'm clicking on this and let me click refresh. So you can see Kant database is created. And if I just click on this drop down, you have information schema. So while you create any database, you'll be having two different schemas already defined. One is information schema, another one is your public schema. So I'm not spending time on what these schemas are. Just I want to teach you on basics of SQL stuff here inside Snowflake. So in order to create your tables, I'm creating a schema here. So I'm just saying create or replace schema. For example, I want to create a schema, maybe like SQL tutorial, for example, and I just executed. So even I created a schema SQL tutorial. Let's just try to refresh whether we got that schema or not. Yes. So you got schema here, SQL tutorial, a new schema created. Now what I need to do, I want to store a table. So in order to create a table, we know the simple command, create or replace. I can just start, for example, I can say create or replace. I can just say table. Okay, what table you want to give it? I'm just giving my table name as maybe employees, some table name, employees. And here under employees, so what data you need to have it? Maybe I'm just storing, I need to store something like employee. And so again, I don't want this one. So I want employee underscore ID, and this need to be integer. And I want to auto increment those values. So as someone is going for it, I need to automatically increment it. And then I want his anything like first underscore name, and name need to be string. And then I need to give his last name, last underscore name, even this need to be string. And then we can give it as some department, maybe ID, and even department ID, it need to be integer. And we can give some salary of that person, and the salary can be decimal. So now I want it to be decimal, and it need to contain 10 characters, and after the 10 characters level, you will want 2 decimal points. And I just want to say, if you want to give date, even higher underscore date, I want the data type to be, I just want to cover all the different data types. So now I want to create employee ID, which needs to be integer, and it need to auto increment. And I need their first name, and it need to be string, and last name string data type, and department ID integer data type. Salary, it need to be decimal, which need to contain 10 characters and 2 characters after your decimal point. And the higher date, it need to be like a date format. And then finally, I need to say what exactly the primary key is. So I'm just saying primary key. I'm saying primary key going to be employee underscore ID, going to be the primary key, and say colon and run this. For sure, it's going to throw me with an error, unexpected higher date. All right, let's see what exactly the error. It is saying higher date. So I gave higher date as date. Here, I missed a comma. All right, let's just run it. So table employees successfully created. So we created the table, which is called employees. Let's see whether, so now this falls into a category. So now let's see where exactly it's stored. If I just refresh, go to tables, SQL tutorials, you can see under employees, you can see this. Now, what exactly we done? Here, we created a database. Here, we created a schema. Here, we created a table. Now, this falls into a category of DDL. So this falls into a category of DDL. What is meant by DDL? So in order to give any comments here, you can use double, means like a hyphen. So double hyphen, and you can say DDL. So it's going to be mostly your, this one. It's going to be more like comments. So now what exactly this command is saying? We are trying to data definition language. I'm creating a database, Kant underscore database. I'm creating a schema, SQL tutorial. I'm creating a table, employees. And these are the values of the column. So we call this as, so now structure, or we can call it as, so now this schema is more like, you can say, in order, within the database, you have different divisions. We can call that schema. So this is table-based schema. So now in order to store the data, this is the structure. You cannot store mobile number. Why? We haven't stored any mobile number here. So we provided employee ID, we provided employee name, last name, and what data type is each column you provided. The structure, the schema design of your table, you designed it. Now what you are doing inside the schema design, now we call DDL language, or we call data definition language. After defining the data, now here we created a database and all this. Kant, if I want to use any of these databases, what is the command? So now here, if you take a BPEC store, or if you take, you have a superstore, or you have a tables. So under tables, you have market data. So now if I want to use this BPEC store, then how can I use the command? So now you know the command, same like your SQL commands. You can simply say here, I can just type, here. So use database, I want to use database. So BPEC store. Now I'm trying to use BPEC data, BPEC store, BPEC use data. I'm using BPEC store database, and I want to use the schema within that. So now I want to use tables. I want to retrieve the data, for example, marketing data. So now for that reason, I'm saying again, use schema superstore. I want to use schema superstore. Now, operations, so where exactly? I feel like 1 minute, if I go back to account admin. So sysadmin is not having the authority, or maybe use schema super store. Yeah, I think when you're going for this, account admin is having a role to it. So to go back and to use it. So a sysadmin don't have the access to go back and to use Superstore. That's the reason this is not giving me the access whenever I'm running. So it is throwing me with an error. Now I change the means like role to account admin. Now, for example, I want to select the data. I can simply say select star from, so your marketing data. So I can just simply say marketing data run. So like you're able to see the data here, we are able to retrieve the data. You can see it. So now this comes into, now if I want to use any other database, now that's the problem with the role. So now when you have a role defined, so one person, so now one role guy cannot access the databases which he haven't provided. So as an account admin, I need to give a access to sysadmin to access this particular database or this particular table. Only then he can do that. If you are not giving that access, he's unable to go back and he's unable to pull the data. That's what happens. Now, I want to go back and I want to use, so like this particular table, I want to retrieve the data. So again, for the safer side, I'm just going use role. So sysadmin, I just want to go with sysadmin role. And I want to perform, I want to use my Kant database. So for that reason, again, I'm saying use database. So Kant underscore database and enter. So I'm using Kant database and I want to use the schema. So use schema. So now within Kant database, we have it schema, SQL tutorial. I'm using SQL tutorial schema. Now within SQL tutorial, so now I have a table called employees. So in order to retrieve the data, I can just simply say select star from employees. So by saying select star from employees, so we are able to get the data here, but this data complies only employee ID, first name, last name, department, so and even query duration. So within how much time you're able to run your query. So like how many rows you have it, query ID, show more, so end time, so role, who is running this particular one, warehouse. So everything we are able to see here. So now if the task is means like Snowflake is powerful practically. If you want to run even more higher complex activities, you can create warehouses and you can do that. And we can do a lot within Snowflake. Let me just minimize it. Now I want to insert some data. So this again select star falls into a category of DQL, data query language. So now the purpose of DQL is in order to retrieve the data, we are using DQL. And for example, I want to insert some values inside my employees data. So we can just do it. For example, I can just say insert into, and I want to insert into what? Employees. So that's the table. And we have the columns. So which is, what is the column names? So we have first name, first underscore name, and I got my last underscore name, and I got department ID. Let me just copy instead of that. I want to place department ID, and then I want to place salary, and then hire date. I want to insert hire date. So insert into employees, all this. So now I want to provide, what are the values? So I want to say values, and values are, for example, I want to give first name, maybe Raj, and Kant, and I want to give the department ID as 1, and salary as maybe like 10,000, and hire date as maybe 2024 hyphen 0. I think today's date is 7 and 19, for example. So I want to insert this, and let me enter one more. Let me just copy the same thing and just paste it here. And I want to enter this time, this is going to be our something Kant, and Kant 1, and this is department ID 2, and salary some 20,000, and this is maybe he joined on 2022 119 or maybe 20. For example, let's go with 2 and let's enter. So there is a mistake where I gave Raj. Okay, let's see, is it because of double quotations? Yep, it is because of double quotations. Let's change it. So we are able to insert 2 rows. Let's try to retry this. So simply select star from employees. So if I run, I'm able to retrieve these 2 rows. So there is a first row, which is Raj Khan, department ID, and even you provided your salary as your data set, and at the hiring date we provided. So in this way, what we can do, we are able to perform DDL operations, and this one starts as the very first one. If you see, the creation of data going to be DDL, and if you are trying to perform insert operations, update operation, or alter operations, they call it as DML, data manipulation language. And whatever the query you have written right now, select query, we call it as DQL operations, data query language operations. So the purpose here is now same like in Excel. So now you are trying to create a schema. So what you are doing, you are trying to create a schema. So you are creating a table schema, I mean. So inside the schema, based on these data types, you are trying to feed the data inside. So in order to create a table, so like you are using DDL, data definition language, and in order to insert the values, you are using DML, data manipulation language, and in order to retrieve the data, you are using DQL, data query language. Now, as I said here, you need to learn about the topics like primary key, foreign key. This kind of concepts are very important. So now here I'm not touching all that. It's a very initial kickstart. So if you are anyone, like this is a very simple kickstart. So if you are interested, so like give a try. So just create a Snowflake account. So trying a Snowflake account is very, very simple. So just you can say Snowflake trial. You can click on start your trial today. You can just start providing your data, and you can just give role, you can just click continue. Then it's going to ask you for your means like the cloud provider, AWS, anything you can choose it. So I have selected AWS. You can choose Microsoft, you can choose AWS, anything you can do. So I do a lot of ETL operations from AWS to this. So I felt AWS is more suitable for me and I went with that. So once you created that, you get a activation link to your email ID. Just click on that. You're able to start using it. So in order to kickstart writing any of this command, only things you need to have is like for sure you will be having the role. So you can use account admin. You're not doing it at an organization level. You can take account admin, one warehouse going to there. Just create this command, start using this basic commands, whatever the commands we have. So like use role, account admin, already account admin is there. So create or replace database, do that. Create or replace schema, do that. Create or replace table, do that. So in this way, start performing the operations that going to help you. So like I'll be taking, so in case if you are interested, do let me know on more lectures on Snowflake. If you're interested, please comment your interest in the comment section in the YouTube so that I can understand, and based on that, I can make one more video around Snowflake. Thank you so much. I hope if you like the content, please do subscribe. Thank you so much.